Hello class, welcome to a brand new week of online learning. Our science question of the week is, have you ever wondered what it takes to be a dinosaur? I know I have. Now, what does a dinosaur look like, you ask? Well, a dinosaur looks like this. Whoa, those bones look super old, don't they? This is what we call a fossil. So dinosaurs are not alive today anymore, but we are able to excavate bones and fossils and learn more about them. In this lesson, we are going to learn about fossils and be able to produce a fossilization model that will also cover some of the geological periods we have been discussing in class this semester. And then after that, we will do a quiz on what we have learned. You will also give me a paragraph that explains your models and your thinking as you made them. Really quick, I want to go over the materials that I've provided for you all this week. So you have the videos that you're watching right now. You also have the quiz materials that you can access through our class portal. There is also included there a list of research sources and rubrics for all of your assignments that you will be doing. So you can feel free to check there for any questions you have, and if there are any further questions, don't hesitate to email me. Great, now let's get into the lesson. Right, so as we said, our question of the week is, what is it like to be a dinosaur? So here are some more pictures of fossils that are commonly found and talked about. This is what dinosaurs look like now, and it takes a lot of work to get this way. We've talked a little bit about geologic periods and eras in class before. We are in the Cenozoic era, but fossils are very old. It actually takes 10,000 years to make a fossil, and many fossils that we study are even older than 10,000 years. Any guesses as to what era fossils might be from? Feel free to pause the video for a minute and see if you can come up with any guesses. That's right, the Mesozoic era. Mesozoic era started about 250 million years ago and ended about 66 million years ago. That's a really long time. So if dinosaurs are this old, it must take a lot of work to get them from turning into a living creature into these fossils that we're looking at. So the fossilization process is a very tricky one. So tricky that only a few things that die in the right circumstances ever get to be fossilized. What has to happen is that the animal or plant first dies. Then the soft tissues, like their skin, their muscles, and other soft organs that we've talked about, something else might be a heart or a brain, those decay. Decay is when something decomposes or falls apart over time. That's when you see stuff like mold and mildew, and it just kind of starts to deteriorate and fall apart. And after all of that falls off, you're going to be left with a skeleton, or for a plant, it could be like the roots or the leaves that have just the veins going through it. And then a layer of sediment starts to build on top of the skeleton. We've talked about sediment a little bit in our geology lessons, but for a reminder, sediment is made of rock particles. It's kind of like a loose, watery sand. As more and more of this sediment or watery sand builds up, it gets super heavy on the bones and starts to pack down into more solid rock, like a rock that you find outside that's really, really heavy, right? So this makes the sediment surrounding the bones turn to solid rock. After the sediment turns to solid rock, the water that was in the sediment begins to dissolve the bones that are buried underneath all the rock. This creates a hollow or a hole where the bones used to be. The minerals that are in the water slowly start to fill in that hole where the bones used to be, and then it hardens into a fossil. And as you see in this next video, I'm demonstrating what this would look like with a grape and a toothpick. So for this example of fossilization, I am going to have an orange and a toothpick instead of a grape. The orange has some skin on it to kind of represent the skin of the animal, and the orange itself represents an organism. The toothpick in it represents the bones of the organism. So say an organism has died, so it could be an animal, maybe it's a T-Rex, something like that. So it dies in a place where it's going to be able to be covered by layers of sediment. And as this is happening, the bones start to be uncovered because the orange in the animal skin is decomposing. So now we have just one bone, the skeleton there, the toothpick, that is still being covered by more and more layers of sediment, right? And that starts to slowly turn into hard rock. Eventually what happens is the bone is going to take in the minerals from the water. The water is going to dissolve the bone, and then it's going to solidify into a fossil, which is represented by this metal paperclip, because fossils are going to be made out of rocks and minerals. Okay, so now we're going to make some models that represent the different geologic periods that we have discussed in prior classes, and we're going to use this to place and label a few different types of fossils and the periods that they would be from. You have multiple options to create these videos. Here I'm going to show you two ways I chose to do it to show you some examples. The first way is with a paper fossilization model. As you can see, it's a lot of writing, so if you prefer more physical representations for things, I would recommend doing a different way. But up here, I just have it labeled the Fossilization Geological Period Model. As you can see, I chose 7 fossils to label and put in the correct geologic period. I have my eras labeled as well. You do not have to do this, but if you would like to, for extra credit, you may. And then here I have all 12 geologic periods, not counting the current one, the Quaternary period. And then over here I have listed the millions of years ago that this was. So if you see, you look at Tyrannosaurus rex, he lived right at the end of the Cretaceous period, which was about 66 million years ago, right? So this is a very just easier way to do it for those of you that like to have a written copy of something. For the next way to build the model, this is a little bit more of a physical representation. We're going to have a glass or a clear container of some sort. You are going to want some sort of tiny plastic animals or something to represent your 7 fossils that you choose. I have some masking tape, which I can stick on the outside after in order to label my fossils and my geologic periods. A marker just for writing and labeling on the masking tape. Scissors, just in case, you never know what you might need scissors. And then I chose to use some kinetic sand. I have 2 colors here, so I can do layers of geologic periods. You can choose to do this a few different ways. You could do like actual rocks or sand if you have access to that. You could also use like smushed up Cheerios and use that as some dust. Really, you can get creative with this activity. Okay, so for the purpose of this video, I'm actually only going to create a couple of layers just to show you how you might be able to set it up. I'm going to pretend I've already done a lot of the lower layers, and I'm just going to focus on doing the the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. So I'll start out, I have my cup here. I am going to take some of this orange kinetic sand and just scoop some of that into here. And then we have our first layer forming at the bottom. I might make it a little bit thicker. So since we're pretending that we've already done more of the layers, so I'm just doing the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. I'm not going to need 12 layers like you will for your models. We have our first layer, and this one would be the Triassic period, right? So there we go. Now, one thing that was found in the Triassic period were turtle shells, right? So for this one, I might take my little animal, and I'll go ahead and I will pop him right in the side, and then I can put a little bit more sand. See? I want him to be inside this specific layer, so I'm going to take a little bit more sand and just dump it right on top, and then there he is. And now what I can do is I can take my tape, right, and I can put Triassic period, and then I can indicate what fossil I'm labeling here, which is the turtle shell. And then I can take my masking tape or whatever you're using for a label. You could use sticky notes. You could cut out strips of paper and just put it next to it. So here's this. There is the Triassic period with the turtle shell, right? Now I'll do another layer here. So I'm gonna switch colors so y'all can tell what layer it is. After the Jurassic, we get the Triassic period. So this next green layer right here is going to be our Jurassic. Now, there's an animal that was alive at the end of the Jurassic period, and that was the Stegosaurus. The Stegosaurus was right between Jurassic and Cretaceous. So I'll just stick my little fossil right kind of at the top of this new layer I just made. So as you can see, he's kind of sitting in there, but instead of covering him with more green, I'm actually going to go ahead and make the Cretaceous. So he's sitting right between the two layers because this fossil was found to be between the two periods. Awesome. So right here we have our turtle shell, which is in the Triassic. Then right here, you have the Jurassic period. And then here is our Stegosaurus. And the one that he is in between is Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. So there you are. Those are some fun ways to create your models for this activity. I will say I highly encourage that you check out those online resources that I provided in order to figure out all of the fossils you choose and to make sure you have the geological layers labeled correctly. You do need to remember to label all 12 geologic periods and try to find 7 fossils. The thing with the fossils though is you get to choose what fossils you want to label. So if you want to label T-Rex and Stegosaurus and all the really cool dinosaurs that you love, you can go for it. Just make sure you have 7 of them. I will let you know you do have an option for a little bit of extra credit here if you add more details in than is required. So if you want to do like 10 or 11 dinosaurs, go for it. And if you want to go into more detail, as you saw with my paper model I showed you, I included the 3 eras that we have. You can get up to 10 extra credit points on this assignment. I will also remind you that you are writing a summary paragraph to go along with your models, and you do need to explain your thinking as you create it. But you can use your research to make this as an informed paragraph and an informed model that you build. You will all have 3 days to prepare and turn in your fossilization and geologic period models. You will turn in the summary paragraphs at the same time. It is in the student portal of our class. After you complete the models and the paragraphs, I do ask that you complete a quiz based on the lesson. You will have 1 day to complete this quiz, but don't worry, it's pretty easy based on the research that you'll do as well as the other activities we have for this class. So today we learned about the fossilization process and what geologic periods it took place in. It was in the Mesozoic period, which was mainly the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous period, although there are some fossils that are much older than that as well. You'll complete your fossilization and geologic period models and your summary paragraphs in the next few days to send to me. After you finish these models and paragraphs, you can take the online quiz that I posted in the student portal. Learning about fossils and past events on the Earth helps us prepare for and predict future geological events. This lesson will prepare all of you for your future studies about the world. Thank you and have a good week.